Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Cool. So we are about the time. So let me maybe at the beginning introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Taiob Ali, who will be talking about SQL Assessment, Microsoft's Best Practices Checker. That's the official title of his session. Taiob Ali is Microsoft Data Platform MVP. During his last 15 years, he has worked with the Microsoft Data Platform and MongoDB, both on premises and cloud. His experience includes all three major business sectors: finance, e-commerce, and healthcare. He has hands-on experience managing large database projects, including massive data migration, intricate process design, testing and deployment, performance tuning, and long-term capacity planning. So welcome our next speaker. Taiob, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Camille. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, hopefully you can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Awesome. Let me move this out. Great. Okay, so thank you, everyone. And Camille, thank you for moderating. I also want to thank the organizers for putting this together free of cost to the worldwide audience, running in 2 tracks and for 2 days. A lot of work goes behind the scene. I personally involved in a couple of local user groups, SQL Saturdays, so I know how much time, energy, and focus it takes to do this, and so far I was moderating a session this morning and watched few. It's seamless. I haven't seen any glitch or anything, so this is awesome job by the organizers, volunteers. So I'm sure you all read my abstract, so I'm not going to repeat that. That's why you are interested and you are here to listen to me. And I will, there's a code of conduct that the organizers put together. I think these are good things to follow, even if you are not in a conference. It's pretty much saying be nice to others, be respectful when you put a comment in public place. If you think it might offend someone, keep it to yourself. So I just want to again reiterate that, and definitely want to thank Redgate, SolarWind, SQL Solutions Group, Minionware from Texas, because without their support, it's not easy, or it's not just possible to bring this free of cost to the worldwide audience. So definitely, if you need a product, I'm not going to talk about their product, but if you need one, try to give them a preference when you are shopping for or when you are looking for a solution for your either for your consulting company or if you're at your full-time job, because if they're contributing to the community, I think we should give them some preference, right, if it matches with what you need. So let's move on. So why would you listen to this talk, right? If you're in the same time zone as myself in East Coast, you had a pretty much full day of work, 6:30 time to have dinner, spend time with family, but you are here. So there has to be some reason, right? And if any of you were in Gene's session, Gene talked about a lot of settings, right, that we should check, right, if we have this setting correct or that setting correct. So it's all in good. If I have one server or a couple of, handful of servers, I can go and manually check those. What happens if we are managing hundreds and thousands of SQL servers or database, right? It is not possible for you to do this manually, and it is not possible for you to make sure that this is following your standard or the Microsoft best practice. And that's the whole goal of this talk, is how you can automate this, how you can run this periodically, and how you can be assured that these are following the Microsoft best practice or the standard that you set in. And I'm sure a lot of you might be asking this question, that one rule or one best recommendation doesn't fit in for all my databases or for all my servers. As even if you see Microsoft, right? If you go from SQL Server 2012 to 2019, you will see their recommendation changed over a period of time, right? Even in the newer versions, as you see when you install SQL Server, you can decide how many TempDB files you want, right? So because they know that one TempDB is not good enough. So I'll also show you how you can customize these rules, how you can write your own rules, and you can bring third-party rules, but be careful when you bring it third-party. I highlighted this in a yellow. And then what are the environments it's supported? Any on-premises version SQL Server 2012 and higher, SQL Server running on Azure virtual machines, SQL Server on managed instance. And if you're running on Linux, it supports that. And at the end of this session, if some of you say, whatever you showed us, we like it, but I don't have time to write code and configure all this, I'll show you how to do this completely using a GUI. So before going further, I'm going to take a pause here, a couple of housekeeping. If you have any question, and it doesn't have to be a question, if you have any question, comment, feedback, put it in the chat, put in the Q&A panel. I'm looking at it. Camille will keep an eye. I think Jeremy is also here, so they will, read those to me. And you can definitely follow up with me later on. I do have my contact here. I'll, leave this here, and I'll show this at the end again. I do not have any slide, as you probably realized already. I'm not using any PowerPoint slide. The tool I'm using here is called Azure Data Studio. If you do not know, this is a very lightweight tool, multi-platform, released by Microsoft. And this is extension based, right? And what do I mean by that? So it comes very lightweight, but if you need to add functionality to this tool, that is done by extension. So you can download extensions written by Microsoft or third party, or even a lot of individual people wrote extensions. You can bring those in for whatever you need, and then you can bring something, do some work, you don't need it anymore, you can disable it. You have all those options. So I'm not going to go into details. One comment, I get this question all the time. This is not a substitute for SQL Server Management Studio. Microsoft has a good documentation. Compare and contrast these two tools, where to use which one. So that's pretty much about the tools that I'm going to use. Another note, I'm going to be using Notebook. If you do not know what's a notebook, I'm actually using one right now. As you can see, this is a PowerShell kernel. This has a bunch of different kernels, SQL Custo, Python, and all that. And then the advantage of a notebook, you can write your code, you can write your comments, you can add pictures. As you saw that I have put slides here as a picture. You can run your code, you can save the output, save it as another notebook, and you can ship it to someone else with the attached email or put it in a temporary share for them to look at. So pretty handy. That's what I'm going to be using. Now I'm going to be using primarily PowerShell and SQL kernel. If you have any question on this, so for whatever I said, please put it in the chat. Otherwise, I'll keep going. These are a couple of demo. If you see IPYNB, this is a standard extension for notebooks. I'll be talking about these notebooks, and at the end, I'll be talking about an extension in Azure Data Studio. Now, during most of the demo, because I don't have any other slides, we'll go right into the demo. You'll see that I'm running all my code against either a single database or databases in a single instance or against a single instance, right? And like at the beginning, I said, a lot of you might be thinking, this is all good if you're running it against one server or one database, but I have many. And I do realize that I also do have many at my work. So hold on to that thought. I'll definitely show you how you can use this against many servers or databases. So before I do any demo, what I did is Microsoft actually put these rules in GitHub. You can go, I have links on the first notebook. You can go and look at it. So these rules is exposed to us in two different formats. One is a CSV and one is a JSON format. So, being a SQL Server person, T-SQL is my strength. So what I did is I loaded all these into a SQL Server table. So just to for my own understanding, what are these rules? What are these columns? What do they mean? What kind of data it is? And so I can also show you some of these, right? So I just loaded this into a table. This is a SQL Server 2019 CU13 developer edition running in my laptop that I'm using for this presentation. As you can see, I'm attached to this master database. It's a SQL kernel. And so just to see, just very basic T-SQL, look at a couple of these rules before we run those and see what this does for us. So as you can see, there's 232 rules. And I'm just selecting random 5 just to look at the columns. Each rule has an ID. It's item type. Most of this you will see definition and override. And most of the time, whenever you see override, that's because probably a newer version of SQL Server or probably Azure SQL Managed Instance or SQL Server running on Azure VM. Maybe they had to override a default rule that works for other versions. So they will put an override rule for the same rule ID. There are 3 different types, which we'll look at a little bit later. They have a display name, a little bit more broader name. Then what does this do? A message, and then tags. Tags are very useful. We'll look at it in details because we can use tags to run a subset of rules, and we can do a bunch of other things using these tags. There'll be always a default rule set tag, and then there'll be other tags based on what kind of rule it is. There'll be a brief description, but there'll be a help link in each one. Help links, you can go to a Microsoft documentation or a support doc, and you can read more details in depth about, what is this feature, what is checking, why it is recommending this, and, and all those details. Target platform as SQL Server now run on also on Linux. So whether this rule, as you can see, this one is only for Windows, but this one is for Windows and Linux. And then there are some other stuff with the major versions. And engine edition, is it for managed instance, on premises, or both, and all that. So let's look at a few more things. As you can see, these are pretty much all the rules. Either it's a scope of a database scope or a server scope. And I can, when I run these rules, I can control this if I want to run it as at a database scope, or I can. Run it as a server, or I can say, run against everything. I'll show you both ways. There are critical information and warning, and I just did a count. Most of these are good for Windows and Linux. Some are just for Windows, and nulls are mostly override rules. So whatever is the parent rule, it will follow that. As you can see here, express on premises, standard. So they're, per engine edition, I did some count. And on SQL Server major versions, right? So, there are some newer rules that's only applicable for 12 and 13 that doesn't apply to the older major version of SQL Server. And this is just absolutely my favorite, nothing to do, if you say these are not your favorites, I won't take any offense or anything. Some of this I find very useful. And I'll actually demo some of these right now, just to get warmed up with this demo. So as you saw, I said some of these are my favorites. So there'll be 2 PowerShell command, and when I get to this notebook, which will spend a lot of time, I have more details about those commands. So hold on to that thought. I'll talk about more how you can get those, but you need the SQL Server module, and there is a minimum version you need to get the commands that I'll be using. And there are primarily two PowerShell commands does all the all the work that I'll be doing. So just loading it in case if it's not loaded by default, or when I'm opening there is a way you can set to auto load all the modules in PowerShell. And I'm just declaring a couple of variables, so I don't have to type those again. So the first one is, and like I said, I'll be talking about this command more. I'm passing a variable that I set up here. Server instance is just taking my local host. It's a named instance, SQL Server 2019, sitting in my laptop because I also have a default instance here. And I'm checking deprecated features, right? So I know there are other tools by Microsoft that if you are doing an upgrade or if you're planning for upgrade, you can run those and analyze your databases, your server, and it will spit out all the deprecated features. So that's absolutely useful. I use that, but here now you have a newer way, just a one-liner. If you have a bunch of servers, you can pass this, and a bunch of databases, you can do it all in one line. Your variable has to hold all those, and you can, do it for each one. Like I said, I'll show you later on, and you can run this, and it will give you if you have any deprecated feature. During most of this demo, I'm not even going to read the output, and I'm not going to talk about what the problems are. I generated some of those purposely in my environment for the demo because some of those topics are very broad, right? Like unused indexes, duplicate indexes, max memory settings. Some of those individual items can take 10-15 minutes just to give a very brief idea. So we're not going to get there. I'm not going to read about this. I'm not going to tell you how to solve this. The whole goal of this is to find out if my servers and databases are following the standard that I want it to follow, or and these are written by Microsoft. So if I want to follow Microsoft engineers practices, best practice recommendations, how can I do that? So that's kind of the goal, not how to get into the individual rules, because there are 232, you don't have time. So most of the time I'm just going to, as soon as there is a big output, I'm just going to get rid of it with this button just to keep it clean. So next one is a temp.db files not same size. Like again, what's the implication of temp.db files not same size, right? We can talk about it, go read, Brent Ozar, Paul Randall, they all, talked about it in very, in details. That's why Microsoft, and why you need multiple temp.db files, because of the, allocation pages and all that. So I'm not going to get there. There are new trace flags that, older trace flags we don't need anymore. There are a bunch of improvements. But how can I check, right? So if we run this, right now I have all my files, of the same size. So yeah, you don't see anything. And if I take this, and I put enough comments and stuff, so if you download this and you want to test all this, you should be able to do this. So I'm just changing one file to different size to 10 meg, just for the sake of this demo. Now if I run this rule, gives me a warning, right? And if I revert what I did, come here, run this rule again, we do not see anything. How about you log in with the same password? Now, hopefully your company has enough checks and guardrails that nobody's doing that. As you see in the news pretty much every week, there's breach, ransomware attacks, whatnot, right? One of the biggest concern for, for the IT professionals nowadays. Most CTOs, if you ask them what keeps them up at night, they will say, attack on their infrastructure or whatever. So again, for demo purpose, if we create this, and there is another one, this is actually checking the same password. There is another check to do the weak password. That's also very, very handy. And these things might not seem very useful right now because I'm just checking against one. But like I said, if you have 1,000, or if you're a consultant, you go to a new place, you want to make sure things are right. Sometimes they have reservations to run, some of the stuff that the, like Brent Ozar has, or his company, and other stuff that people wrote in the community. People sometimes have reservation to install those, but these are written by Microsoft, so you should be okay. It tells you that that this is breaking this rule set because your login has the same password, right? So no, not good. So I'm just going to drop it. Again, there's a piece of code that I put here. I actually copied it from MS SQL Tips website, so I make sure I give them enough credit so people don't think that I wrote it by myself. I have all these in one file. Also, I put it in comments. So, and now if we run this, as you can see, I get a warning for duplicate indexes. And I can also get unused indexes. So be careful with unused indexes. As I said, I'm going to talk about it, but do not run this and go and start deleting all those indexes, please. There is a blog post people wrote about, how you can, how you can make a good decision about the indexes to get rid of. So be careful here. Max memory thing, and these numbers are mostly for demo. I'm not. I got pulled out at the studies. There a good spot to download the notebooks. Yes, I'll share that. So just give me a minute. Yes, there is a good place to download all this. So I'll share the link. That's a question from Sit Zoom 2. So it's probably a pseudonym. So yes, I'll share it. So right now, if I run this, it's happy with my memory setting, right? And if I change this to this, I'm giving SQL Server a little bit more, means I will have less for the operating system. Now it's complaining. It's saying I have greater than recommended. So, okay, sorry, Tony. Tony said it's a corporate login, so sorry. Yeah, so because I set it to 13,000, and this is one of the rules that maybe the Microsoft's default will not work for you, right? Depending on what you're running in your SQL Server, if you have CLR code, if you have third-party DLLs, if you're running other softwares, and you can modify those. That's coming later in the demo. So let me revert this. Power plan, and I think Gene was touching. There was a previous session in this track, about power plan. This is one of the things that you'll always see. You'll always see. Open a case with Microsoft, they will ask you about this, right? So if you have thousands of servers, how can you check that with this one line of code? You can do this way. So I probably have it set correctly. So let me make it a little bit. So these are the power plans that I have available. Which one is a high performance is HC. So that's not the high one. That's a wrong description. I'm going to fix this again. This is actually balanced. So if I set this, and now if I run this, I should be getting it. Yeah. So you see, I set it to balance. Now I see a warning that my power plan is not switched to the high performance. And if I set it up to high performance, and now we run this, we're not going to get that, right? So this is another way you can check, a couple of things that I wanted to show you before you, dive deep into this. So I have a notebook here that I mentioned here. No, I did not mention it here, but I have it and in my GitHub. So this will probably be a good time to answer the question that I was asked. So I'm going to put the URL right now. And I'll send it to the organizers also to probably include it in the recording. So, oh no, this went to everyone, sorry. Okay, so here you can download all the materials that I'm showing you. So one of the notebooks I have is a called Quick Start. And I'm not showing this in the demo. So if someone doesn't have all the time to do everything I'm doing in this session, but you still want to try it out quickly, this will be the notebook. And the reason I'm not going to show it because everything in that Quick Start notebook is actually in the notebook that I'm going to be talking about right now, and we'll be spending a lot of time here. That's why I did not want to show that. So again, I want to mention that I did not write this notebook from scratch. This was copied from GitHub. This is a repo maintained by Microsoft or a branch. And then I started modifying from there. And, I added more comments and, did whatever I had to. So far, I have shown you invoke SQL assessment command. We haven't used the get SQL assessment item. With the SQL assessment item, I can see the rules without really running it. But with invoke SQL assessment, we run the rules. And we can combine these two. So I can choose a set of rules, look at it, and then I can run it in one line. So I'll show you all those. I put a little bit of description here, but these are also URLs. You can go to the Microsoft documentation to see more. What are the switches and what are other options and what everything does. So I also talked about some setup here. This is the minimum version of the SQL Server module that you need to get these two commands. I probably have the latest version. I have 18245. So I'm a little bit higher from this, but you definitely need minimum this version to do this. There are warnings you might see or you will see depending on your XP command shell setting, if it's turned on or off. Definitely, I do not advocate or I do not recommend to keep XP command shell turned on in your production environment because that's a risk. But some of these commands depend on that, and Microsoft is totally aware of it. I did reach out to the to the program managers and had a couple of email conversation, and they are actually working on it to remove the dependency on XP command shell and use .NET APIs, so you can keep your XP command shell turned off. So one advice only I can give you, if you're going to run this periodically, and if you want to turn on XP command shell, turn it on, run your stuff, you save your result. We're going to talk about where to save the result and how to do that, and then turn it off if that's your standard, right? So first one, I was I'm getting a SQL instance, and I'm then calling invoke SQL assessment, right? As you can see, this is a server level, and it will automatically choose and only run the rules at a scope of a server, not at a database scope, right? So let's run this. So please put any questions, comments in the Q&A panel, or in the chat panel also works, but Q&A panel will probably be the ideal. That way organizers or Kamil can keep a check and mark stuff as answered. So we ran this. As I said, I'm not going to read, but all these rules are at a server level and they got executed. I put 5 more different options that you can run the same command because you might be doing a step different way. So I just did it this way, but all of these are correct. All of these are going to give you the same result set. So I'm not going to run those, but I just put it here in case if people are, running things using different options, they're all valid. This one, I'm not going to run this right now, but this works. I tested it. This is a public IP address for a SQL Server running on Azure VM. And you can do the same thing. You can get the SQL instance and then pass it, and you can run invoke SQL assessment. Now, if you're in your production environment, absolutely, I'm not going to recommend you to do this. If you're going to practice in your own subscription in Azure, just to have a VM node data, just to test data, yes, go for it. But if it's your corporate server, you definitely do not want to we actually even don't expose public IP address at my workplace. We use private endpoint. You definitely do not want to do this, and calling with the public IP address. I hopefully it's not even exposed, and this call will not get into there. And there are other mechanisms to connect to, but this is a way that you can, you can test this, and it does work. So I put this code here in case if someone want to test a SQL Server that's running on Azure VM, you can run this command. So let's move to a database level, right? So here, my variable database, I'm getting a database and I'm passing a name. If I did not do that, it will get all the databases. Then I can loop through, which I'll show you. But here I'm just saying, just check my wide word importers, right? This is one of the sample database that Microsoft produce or Microsoft provide for us. So. Again, this one has two more options I put here, option 2 and option 3. These two will produce the same result as option 1. You can choose whatever you prefer, right? It's going to work. The last one here. Okay, so these are all the, now this is a long list. This is just looking at this one database and have, it ran bunch of rules and giving a lot of suggestions about indexes, unused indexes and whatnot. So there's a lot of stuff. So I'm just going to get rid of this. I'm also not going to run this, but if you run this one, this is going to be running against all your database in this server, right? Because I did not pass a database name, and I'm passing all the databases and passing it to this command. So it will go through each one and it will run. Now, so far, we've been running blindly, right? I've been saying, get an object and run the rules that apply to that object, right? So how can I see the rules that are applicable to object, right? Here is the other command that I showed you at the beginning. I haven't used it so far. It's called get SQL assessment item, right? So here again, my scope is a server level. I just want to see the rules that will apply if I want to assess this object, right? I'm saying object because in PowerShell, everything is object, but it's really the SQL Server I'm talking about. And then if I pass my master database, I can do the same. Show me the items that will run against my master database if I, do assessment. Now, again, I'm just passing this without any filter. Now, here is this one thing that I can do. I can say, just show me the one with the minimum severity of warning. Or I can say, I just want to run the one that's critical. And there's nothing critical at a server level. I think there's only 2 critical rules that are at a database level. So maybe I should use that next time when I do this demo at a database level, so we get some output here. I talked about tag before, right? Why tags are useful. I can see all the rules applicable to a server, and that is a tag of trace flag. As you can see now, this gives us only the rules that are related to trace flags. So I've shown you a couple of this. Now, how do we run subset of rules or a specific rule and all that, right? So there is a rule here. We talked about XP command shell right now, right? Just a few minutes ago. There is a rule just to check that. So let's turn this on. Come here now. And I'm just passing the ID of a rule, meaning just run the one rule. And it gives me a warning, right? Because it's a security risk. We revert this. I just hit F5, so And we're good, nothing there. I can check all my backups. So it says that, it does not only, backup, but does a bunch of other stuff, that, I have outdated transaction log backup. I don't have a full backup of 7 days. I have many more virtual log files than it should be. It's probably looking at the size of the log file. So there's a bunch of warnings. And again, VLF is another, we can talk about probably for half an hour about this, why we shouldn't have more or less and what size and all that. And there have been some changes with the newer versions of SQL Server, the recommendations changed. Now, this is where first time I'm combining these two commands. I'm getting the SQL assessment item and I'm invoking. And, oops, sorry. If you do not know this, outgrid view pass-through, I love this. Look it up. So what it does, it gives me all these rules, right? Now I can hit Control and I can just choose 3, and I'm just choosing here randomly. Once I do this, I close this. This will only run those 3 rules that I selected. This looks a little bit more. I'm going to look at that. Let me see what's the scope here. Set the instance level. I'll take a look, but I thought it ran a few more than I selected, but it's supposed to only run the one that I selected. So I'll take a look at that. So far what we've been running, I'm showing the results in a window. I'm discarding the result. But that's probably not the way you want to do it, at work, right? Because like I said, our goal is to check hundreds and thousands of this. So here, I'm showing you how you can save these results in a table, right? And I put enough descriptions here about these commands. One of these, you can flatten out and then you can use the right SQL table data, and it is going to, put all those in your, and you pass your instance, database name, and table. So if we take this and run this, so you can see that all of these are saved into this table, right? Now you can do a bunch of things, right? If some of you are into Power BI, or you can just, even in Excel spreadsheet, if you do a pivot table, you can create some fancy graphs. And maybe over a period of time, you can show your boss that, hey, you had this many things not in compliance, and slowly you are reducing it, right? Week by week. And if you're consulting, you can do the same. Like when I arrived, you had this many things not in compliance, and see what I did, right? So you can do, and I just have a, very, very basic, probably a GroupBy query here that I can show you. So, this is by dates, right? And I probably doesn't have a trend that is going down because I play with this, I save, different things. But then in Azure Data Studio, actually, you have a nice thing to you can even do it right here, right? I mean, mine is, definitely doesn't make sense, right? It was big here, went down and went up. But if it's slowly reducing, right, you can just copy this and send it to folks, right, to show that, what you and your team is doing. I don't see any questions. I'll move on, but again, I'm going to go into customization. What happened when the default doesn't work, and how you can create your own rules and stuff. So probably will be a good, probably a good time to post your questions or comments if you have any.
No, there's no questions so far.
Okay, great.
So you're good to continue.
Yeah, I'll move on. I'm not going to read this, but I put enough comments. There are some prerequisites for some of the customizations, especially if it's a third party. DLL, what you have to do. If you're writing your own, depending on what language you're using, there will be some stuff to do. So the first one, there are a couple of variables that I'm going to declare. And then as you can see here, it says that all my backups are older than 7 days, right? Full backup. So not good. Because I should be having a full backup maybe every 7 days. And some of you might say, no, for my requirement, I need a backup every 3 days for whatever reason. And so I wrote this, full backup override.json, right? So let's take a look at that. Pretty simple. You put the ID of the rule, override, and your threshold. Now, if I use that file, and I have to put the path so it can go and look at the JSON file. Now it's checking my full backups against 3 days, right? Take it further. If you think that I only have one database that I want to take a full backup every 3 days, the rest are good for 7 days, right? What you can do, you can put a override with a filter. So now if I point to that file, it will check every database for 7 days, except Stack Overflow 2013 is checking against 3 days. So this is one way how you can customize the default rules. We saw this one for the check memory before, right? Now, we saw that when we had the memory set to 13,000 megabyte, we did get a alert. But this time I really want to keep it at that value, right? Because that's probably I need, right? I don't want to give more to the operating system that Microsoft recommended. So now I get the same what I saw before. But if I know that what I'm doing and I really want it to be 13,000, I can have override, and now you see I do not see anything. So how did that happen? Same thing. Override, ID. Now here you see that I use the recommended, right? Not the threshold. On the backup, I had a thing called, I don't know if I still have, no, I don't have that open. On the backup, I use the key as threshold, but here I used override. So you have to open the rule and see, what you are overriding, right? And use the same key value pair, so it matches. You can disable a rule. If you have a rule that you do not want to run your farm-wide, you know that you don't need it, you are not following it, you have a different setup that you need, you can just disable that rule, right? So I put a couple of things in a variable. I can run a command, or I can have a file to disable trace flag 634, for example. So 634, it does, I think it does some compression for column store behind the scene, if I remember correctly. Yeah, column store compression task in the background, yeah. And you do not want this rule to be checked. So, this is not, Microsoft by default want that to be disabled, but you enabled it for your case. So you can run this. And now you will see that trace flag 634 is false. So it is not going to check in future for you. Now, once you disable it, if you really want to test it, I put some code here. I'm not going to run this. So you can turn it on. And then if you run this, you will not see anything because you disabled the rule. You can disable all trace flags if you want to. So disable all trace flag.json. So how do we do that? ID trace flag, override, enabled equals false. That's it. You just need this. Now, once you run this, you see that all the trace flags are false.
I have a quick question in the meantime. Are you able to share with us those JSON files in your repository? Because I'm looking at the at your presentation folder in your GitHub, but I can't find any of these customization JSON files.
Yeah, good question. So I put it in the comments here. Those actually copied as is from the Microsoft website or from their GitHub repo. So I didn't want to put it in my repo again in case they get changed. So I rather you download that directly. And I actually have comments here at the top when I talked about the customization that you want to download those files. And if you see a variable here, yeah, so I'm actually taking this in a variable, the path, and I'm using it. Okay, and cool, I put a comment here. You see this?
Yeah, I missed it. Thanks.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Now I went too fast. I'm not reading all the comments, right? But I put it enough. And the reason I didn't want to bring it to my repo in case that change, I have to. So I didn't want to just make another copy for no reason.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And I did check with program managers. They are totally, they want us to, just use those and, share it with the community. So, things get out.
Yeah, definitely. That looks very, 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 very good. Pretty fantastic, especially that you can customize what kind of rule you would like to apply, what kind of rule you would like to filter it out, or even, customize those rules with your parameters. That's great.
Yeah, and I didn't want to, write again because, they probably don't definitely better than me, right? They're writing this tool. So, why try something that I can already, just copy and use it. So
definitely.
Yeah. So this is another trick that, you saw the disable all trace flag. But now I said, I want to disable all trace flag, but I do not want to disable the ones that are related to performance. So now if you see this, you'll see that I have a mix of true and false. So some are false and some are true. The one are true, they have a tag also with the performance. They have a tag with trace flag, but they also have a tag with the performance. And if you open that file, you should be able to see how that was done. Now, this is all good, right? So we looked at the default rules. We looked at how we can disable a set, individual ones, how we can customize the values, either the thresholds or the recommended value. How about creating new rules, right? Maybe I need something that I want to check across the board, and Microsoft doesn't have a rule, but I want to write one. And I want to take advantage of this, to PowerShell commands that I already have set up to run periodically, collect it, and I have reports, either Power BI, dashboards, and whatnot. So I want to, use this whole setup. And again, I'm not going to read this plus, but please, if you're, planning to write your own, read the comments here, because you definitely have to have those. So the first one is called, custom rule tsql probe.json, right? So let's just run this and we'll look at this. So this is saying that my free space is less than 25%, right? I have a threshold, it's set to 25%. I only have 13%. So it's complaining about, right? So let's look at that custom tsql probe. I'm not going to read this, but there are a bunch of things that you have to mention, right? So, what it applies to, what it does not, give it an ID. And it's pretty much, a T-SQL, right? That's looking at the file size and the free space and all that, right? So here we saw that it's checking 13%. It expects 25%. Money is tight. We cannot afford to keep 25% free space in every file. Company, wants us to get a little bit tighter, on this. And so you want to reduce that. What can you do? So, say 25% is just too much. And so I can override that. So now I wrote a new rule. My threshold is 25%, but I said, no, that's too much. I want to reduce it to 10%. Oh, sorry. And now if I run this, you will not see that rule triggered that we saw at the top here, because now I override this with a 10%. Okay, for this one, this is another one, is looking at the directory, and it's looking at the file size, and this is customizable. I just took an example. Give me all the file size that's bigger than 15 megabyte. But as of now, it still has to use the XP command shell. So let me turn that on. I might have it already here. Okay. And again, I'm not going to open this and read, but you can see, and I haven't written, I didn't write this. I think I changed the thresholds because it was giving like thousands of line. It was looking at all files, but I reduced it to 15 megabytes. So there are some errors. I'm not sure what went wrong here. Strange. I definitely tested all this last night. So try it one more time. Okay, this is I expect because there's an agent service stopped, but I did not expect this. Okay, so I do not know at this point. I probably have to look at it a little bit more, that what happened. But that is what it does. And there are a few more examples that I have. One is in PowerShell. One look at the registry probe and the WMI one, right? So if you are using any CLR, there are some DLLs that you need to load, and then you need to make those enable and set those up as trustworthy. So read these comments before you want to do that. So as I said before, that I'll show you if you want to run this against many servers, right? How do you do this, right? So far we just used one, which is good, but again, if you do not know what is, strange. Hopefully I don't get, okay, I'm just going to show this. So if you don't know what is a CMS, it's called Central Management Server, that you can register all your servers, you can group those, and you can have different, like folders, like, prod, dev, QA, and you can have subfolders. So if you have that, and you do not have to have that, if you say, no, I don't have it, you can pass a CSV file with all your server name. That also works, as long as it gets a list of servers that it needs. Something is wrong, as you see, it's not loading my kernels, and I don't know what happened. If you have all those, and there is a free tool called DBA Tools. Chrissy from Europe, she lead this project. So it's hundreds of people from the community contributed to it. If you do not know, look it up. So combining the DBA tools and these two commands that I showed you, and CMS, but again, if you do not have CMS, don't worry about it. You can pass a CSV file or whatever file list you have. You can then do a for each loop. It will go through each one, do your assessment, and write it to a table that I showed you before, right? And you can pass it I call it like a SQL management instance, right? If you have like a DBA server, your database name and a table name. That way you can pump everything to a table, run it every week or any frequent interval that you want. And then, you can do some reporting out of it, right? If you're improving, you can categorize this by server database, warning and whatnot, right? That way, you have some data that whether you're going in the right direction or not. So the last thing I have to here to show you, now this is all good, right? I showed you a couple of things in PowerShell and T-SQL. Now, if some of you say, no, I do not like any of this, or I don't have time, not that I don't like, to write any piece of code. No? So I talked about extension, and there is an extension called SQL Assessment. And this is written by Microsoft. This can do everything that we talked about, but it can only do one server at a time. So let's connect to my local server, the one I've been using. If you double click this, on the home page, you'll see a bunch of things. And most of these things, like the SQL agent you see here, machine learning, SQL assessment, they're all coming from extensions. So if we click SQL assessment, let's get some real estate back. I can just come here and say invoke assessment. That's it, one click. Now it is going to run an assessment against my server and all the databases. And once it finishes, I'll show you a couple of things, how you can export these results to a SQL Server table. You can create HTML file, PDF, download. So if you are a consultant, you go to a new place, how cool this will be, right? You can run this within a couple of minutes, set up, and you can have a report ready that the things that, that are not following the best practice, right? So this is going to take some time because this is going to run against at a server level scope and for all the databases. So let it run and then I'll come back. Meantime, I will take questions or comments if you have any.
No, unfortunately, or maybe good, there's no questions. Means that people understand everything perfectly.
Okay, so I will, I'll let this finish. I'll show a couple of things, then we'll wrap up. Meantime, maybe I can, no, I don't want, what is that URL for the tool that you are demoing? Oh, okay, so Azure Data Studio, right? So I will pull this up for you. We can look it up live. Azure Data Studio. So I put this in the chat. That's the place that you want to start with, right? The newer version of Management Studio, actually, if you just do the GUI install, it installs Azure Data Studio also by default. Community was not very happy about that. So they made some noise. So Microsoft now have a command line install for Management Studio that you can decide not to, or you can choose not to do that. No, the assessment extension you mentioned. Oh, okay. Sorry, Henry, I misunderstood. Okay. So for that, okay, this is done. Let me show this, Henry. I'll come back to you how to get that extension, right? There is no URL. So I'll show that. Just hold on for a minute. So now we ran this. I can now filter here. So like, this is too much for me to look at. I just want to look at, I don't know, just one database. Now it's going to filter. For each one, it's going to give you all this, details and tag, and there's URL where you can learn more, right? And say I want to clear my filter. I can look at all the rules that it applied. Now, the best thing is export as a script, right? Remember I was showing you how you can save this in a table. Now, if you just use the GUI without doing anything, they give you this whole T-SQL. You can just point it to a server and a database, and you can just load it in a table. Also, I can create a HTML report, right? So if I save it here, and I can open it in a browser, right? The whole report. So nice this will be, right? Put in a PDF, send it to someone, they'll say, this is awesome, right? You probably don't have to tell them that you use this. So if you're new to a place that, you just got a server or a bunch of databases. And all the GitHub links that I put in different places, you can actually go from here, open, and this will take you directly to the Microsoft's GitHub repo for most of this stuff that I'm talking about from here directly. And there is a history, right? So if you run this multiple times, it will save your history, and you can come back and go back, a couple of different runs. You can go and look at that. Right, so you can see all the rules. So Henry, you don't need a URL. You can just come here, search for it. Oh, okay, you said, yeah, I got it, thanks, yeah. And I'm sure, there is probably a, maybe what I said is not right.
So Taiob, so actually you can install this in ADS as an extension, like SQL Assessment, this that you're showing right now. Yeah. Or this SQL invoke SQL Assessment is like a commandlet in PowerShell module, which is SQL Server, yeah? That's the name of PowerShell, right?
Yeah, so you can do it both ways. Everything I was showing at the beginning, I don't need this. They need this extension at all.
Yeah.
As long as I have SQL Server module with that minimum version, it will work. But if someone say, I do not have SQL Server module, I do not want to write, I don't know how to write PowerShell, I do not know, I still like this, I want to check my servers, they can just load this extension, enable it, and there you go. You can use the GUI.
Yeah, because sometimes it's easier if you don't know the PowerShell, if you're not familiar with the PowerShell, or if you just want to do an assessment for one specific SQL database or maybe one specific SQL server, even on dev environment. Yeah.
Yeah, you just want to get it started. You want to see and have a feel how this works. You want to show maybe to your team or to other people. I don't want to do all the work, and I just want to come here and just use it. So that's why this and a lot of things in Azure Data Studio actually work that way, right? That's why these extensions are very powerful. Some of these that saves a lot of our work that we do, like Glenberry's all the DMV queries now come as an extension, so you automatically get updated as you update your extension. So I love it. There's a gentleman, he put bunch of Adam Mechanics SP who is active, a bunch of things into an extension. So
great community work.
Yeah. So I'll just put my contact again in case, I know some of you are probably shy to ask questions in case, or, you download my stuff. If you have question, comments, feedback, something that you liked or you didn't like, maybe you think, I should do it different way, go ahead. I know some of this stuff got stuck. I think the kernel was not loading. I do not know why, but I'll take a look later on. But I did, check everything last night, and I did a reboot this morning. Still it happened anyway. You can contact me in any way, my Twitter or email, everything works. There will be, I think, a feedback request later on, so please fill up. Organizers, volunteers, speakers, always looking for feedback so we can improve and bring a better experience in future, right? So I want to thank you all. If you do not have any question, thank Camille and Jeremy. Jeremy especially for the organizers giving me an opportunity, and Camille for your for moderating this. Thank you very much.
Thank you both
Absolutely.
so much.
Happy to be here. Happy to help.
Yeah, and we'll
Thank you
be
very much, Taiob.
requesting feedback via a post-event survey. Make sure you fill it out. We'll have all the comment boxes down there. We'll be passing everything along. It's anonymous, so don't worry. We won't be revealing anyone's feedback, but I'm sure there's nothing but nice things to say. But thank you so much again. This was an awesome session. Thank you, everyone. Really, we've got 23 people here with us right now, and it's just awesome. At the end of the day, to have so many people still engaged and diving through, and we know it's been a long day, but we're really happy we got to spend it together, and we learned a lot of great stuff and got to spend time with some great people. So thank you all so much. That's a wrap.
Thank you. Yeah, that was the last session during.
Bye.
I love ending on a
day of
high note.
GroupBy
I
America.
love. Well, thank you again, Camille. You were in it to win it. You were a marathon runner. As Taiob, we really can't believe the fact that people have been here as long as the event has been happening today. It is amazing to just have people be so ready to help out, and on days they're presenting, be willing to moderate. So it's amazing. We are so thankful for all of you, and we just hope you all had a great day, and we'll see you soon. Thank you again.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.